It's bound to happen at some point. So those who are maybe just seeing this stream, I just had one there that was on for 25 minutes and then connection went, and it really went. So had to go and restart the router and all that. So we're pretty much starting again, and I'll await that dragon question again because that's just what I started talking about. And I think I was rambling away while the stream wasn't even on anymore. But yeah, so welcome everyone who's made it back. The numbers are back down again. Everyone probably went home. But technical difficulties, can't really do much about it. So yeah, I'll just await some people to come back and some comments again. If you remember what you had asked in the last stream, feel free to leave it again and I'll get to it. And I'll just try and tell people that this one's now live. What a disaster. Right. Okay. There's a question here waiting that I could look at. Adud's back. Elves are immortal by default. Why did Elrond pressure Arwen so much during Lord of the Rings? Did everyone just believe the quest would fail? Then again, you could man the boats and wait. That's the movies, isn't it? Elrond's a bit manipulative to Arwen in the movies. So yeah, it's a bit more complicated with the Lord of the Rings, the books, with Arwen having a choice. So she already really made it, though. That's heavily implied that as soon as she fell in love with Aragorn, which seemed to be pretty much love at first sight, she had made the choice of Lúthien. She was going to, as a half-elven, stay in Middle-earth and become part of the mortal race. And, you know, Elrond's more kind of sad about it. Obviously happy that she's found love and all of that good stuff, but he's never going to see her again when he leaves, and that's pretty deep stuff. So I think this whole pressure, like trying to get her to do one thing, it really seems like a Peter Jackson invention. And they do a lot with Arwen in the movies. There's that whole deal as well with her life is tied to the fate of the ring and all that nonsense, basically. But that was to give Arwen a bigger role in the story, which arguably she kind of deserves. She's not really mentioned much in the Lord of the Rings. She gets her kind of moments in the appendices, but which everyone should read, as I always say. So numbers still aren't back up. So I think a lot of people have taken their ball and went home. But there's some more questions. Yeah, I can plug the merch. Hold on, I'll make it the decided to sell out, and for the weirdos who would want the name of the channel on expensive t-shirts, which are only expensive because the site makes them expensive. I'm not making heavy profits from these, you can visit redbookmerch.com and have discount codes and everything. If you desire, I'm not going to say you have to go and buy one to watch me or anything like that. But yeah, there's the site there. Go and check it out. And you'll see Alien in the chat right here. Going out our way to help with the designs and all that stuff. So praise her with great praise. And there's the motorbike that Oliver always mentions every single time on one camera. So yeah, a snow warning says here, Jack's invention for drama. There's a lot of that. And we see that with those visions of their son and all of that. Again, it's just to give her a greater role in the story, and weirdly to give Aragorn more motivation, which I don't think he really needed, but that's how it is. Nameless Things. I don't think Tolkien would get the term from them. Nameless Things. We have to remember Tolkien knows his mythology and his old texts and his religious texts and all of that. Things being nameless implies that there's this like power behind knowing something's name and all that kind of thing. It predates Lovecraft by a very, very long time, but we do associate that kind of nameless, unknowable aspect with Lovecraft. He didn't invent it, but I think he was a master of it, and I'm a big fan of Lovecraft. But I don't think Tolkien would have got it from them. It's something ancient, and that's implied in the name. They're nameless things. It's I kind of get ideas of demons and all that kind of stuff. I think they're all influenced by something far older, which is kind of fitting for what we're talking about with nameless things. Oh yeah, the three, as I said, for people who are just tuning in, I said that in letter 131 that the three rings did not make you invisible. And yeah, there's figures during the time of the Lord of the Rings that are using them. And we see them appear on the hand. Well, Galadriel, we see it on her finger and she's not invisible. But they wouldn't turn invisible anyway with any of the rings. Because they're well, it depends on the elf. We could probably talk about that. Yeah, it's this kind of idea with what everyone calls the unseen. Would Glorfindel wearing a ring of power turn invisible? I wouldn't think so. It's like a consequence of mortality, really. It's why Tolkien says that dwarves can't become wraiths. They don't fade, meaning they don't get that stretched life, meaning that if a dwarf wore one of these rings of power, they wouldn't turn invisible either. And I think there's a comment. Well, yes, I know that. I didn't say they didn't have names. Just the impression I get from, the power behind a name. I'm not a theologian or anything like that, but from what I know, it's you hold power over it if you know their name, don't you? It's something like that. Oh, here we go. The dragon question. Let's hope the stream doesn't cut off this time. But the question about dragons, their origins, relation to Morgoth, how related Smaug is to that origin. So as I was trying to say, I could ramble about this for ages. I still think it's only one dragon video about Ancalagon with the really annoying comments that I always receive. And I think with dragons, is a lot of what I think about them is speculation, but you have to really speculate because we have all these ideas about Morgoth creating or not being able to create, but being able to make, which is debatable as well, because there's this whole idea of sub-creation as well, which Tolkien goes into detail in, and he says certain figures, not even all the Valar, but certain figures have been granted authority to sub-create. And it's like what they create is allowed to exist, even if it's something that goes against what Eru would want, which is something no one ever really talks about when we start bringing up orcs and things like that. But for dragons, I always think of them as the greatest, I'll say creations in quotations, like Morgoth's greatest project, because you have to remember that I know the Balrogs kind of changed over the course of the writings, but dragons were like created or made to help with Morgoth's forces against elves. It was like these forces weren't strong enough against these elves, and he needed a greater foe for them. And it's like that's where dragons come in. Dragons are, we see with Glaurung, they're completely frightening and overwhelming, and a kind of masterstroke from Morgoth. And I always use Glaurung as an example of my theory about dragons. That is, they have a part of Morgoth in them. And I really want to elaborate in a video on that. Here we go again. I'll make a video on that. But with dragons, I really, really think that as Morgoth was passing his power into the world, into his servants, he's making dragons, probably corrupting some sort of creature that already existed, but he's making dragons, and I think a part of him goes into them, and that's why these dragons really seem like Morgoth to me, with their personalities, and especially Glaurung. He's such a great character. I love all the moments with Glaurung, the way he talks, uh, you know, holding your gaze, and how kind of evil and sinister he is. He's like almost toying with figures that he could just kill. He doesn't want to kill them. He wants them to suffer because Morgoth wants to suffer. I think dragons are really interesting, and that's what I think the relation to Morgoth is. I think a part of his power is in them, more so than orcs or something like that. It's as if he's able to give them their being, but they're like almost tied to him, their personalities and their actions, and they can still survive and he's gone. But it's almost like with Morgoth's power being Morgoth's ring, which is an Arda, dragons are a remnant of it as well, just like a corrupted mountain. A dragon's just a living thing that's something Morgoth corrupted. And I just honestly love the idea that in his desire to make something that could challenge the elves, it's like he's made these beasts that are part of him, and that's why they act that way. So for Smaug, it's I don't know about that, because you're getting into this whole when The Hobbit was written, and Tolkien's late thoughts about Morgoth and Morgoth's ring. We're trying to tie in these very, very different time periods of writing, but it is a dragon, so I think it still works. If you think of the personality of Smaug, it's his connection with gold, which is seen as one of the most corrupted kind of elements in Arda. When you think of Morgoth's ring, it's one reason why Sauron forged the ring out of gold, which I have a video about as well. So I like that whole idea of dragons being part of Morgoth, and it's they're drawn to the Morgoth or the Melkor ingredient, gold. I think that's a good explanation. But obviously, the whole dragons hoarding gold and all that's mythological, and Tolkien was influenced by other stories. But I think it can work if you think of it that way. So I'd like to move on, but I really like that question. And I will, I promise, talk about dragons in a video. Valar. Tolkien says that the Valar, obviously, they would take shape in the manner of the children of Ilúvatar. So I think a lot of the artist impressions, you can be as imaginative as you want. I love a lot of the images of Manwë and Varda, and I really like the ones where they tie them more into their aspect of creation. So there's some really great Varda images where she's blended in with stars, or Manwë is part of the wind, and that kind of thing. And they're not always in the shape of people, because there's even quotes about Morgoth basically floating around as a dark, smelly cloud. And I'm not making that up. It's basically a cloud that stinks. That's what Tolkien says, and that's when, like, you could actually, you reeked of corruption and everything. But then he also talks about possibly Yavanna taking the shape of a tree. So you're honestly free to use your imagination to imagine the Valar. I think when we're talking about them, if you want to use words like primordial and before the awakening of the children or anything like that, it's your mind can go anywhere. Just imagine how they would look. But then they would maybe start to take shape to deal with the children. And you don't want to daunt them. You don't want to daunt an elf. So unless you're Morgoth, so he descends into Arda, and he's said to be tall as a mountain, and he's wading in the sea, and he's crowned in smoke and fire and everything. That's exactly what Morgoth would do. But do you think Manwë would want to be 30 feet tall, standing there, enjoying some food with the elves? I don't think so. But I do think they would be the fairest of everyone, and I like this aspect of them taking on the part of the world that they helped shape. So that's why you often see Manwë with the blue cloak and the feathers and this kind of thing for eagles. I like all that, but there's some interpretations I don't like for the Valar when it starts to get into kind of comic book territory and that. But as I've said in previous videos, I'm jealous of anyone who can create art, and I'm not going to judge them too heavily on that. Glorfindel did. Exceptions always exist, but I like to think of it as, imagine you've been in Middle Earth, which is tainted by Morgoth, and you've died or whatever, and you've went to Mandos, and after your time there, which I think would be reflection and understanding your life and being ready to move on from it. Sometimes elves don't really think of time the way we would. So we might think of an elf sitting in Mandos for 1,000 years as ridiculous, but it might not be for them. But if they're finally free from Mandos, why would they go back to Middle Earth? You're in Valinor, and I just try to imagine where you are in your world just now, or our world, I should say. We'll share one, but let's say you go somewhere where it feels like paradise. You're at ease. There's no corruption, no evil things trying to kill you. It's just bliss. And it's like, do you want to go back in a boat over to Middle Earth? And it's, well, no. So someone like Glorfindel is an exception. There's always exceptions. I always say that. But Glorfindel didn't just go back to Middle Earth because he was like, I fancy going back to Middle Earth. He was an emissary of the Valar. He was just like the Astari, the wizards. He had a mission and he was willing to go back. But if he had a choice, I would say that he'd probably have stayed in Valinor, because why would you go back to that dangerous land across the sea when you're in a place you're welcomed, where you're eventually going to be told to be anyway? So that's how I just think of that. Eagles. So since eagles are lizards with feathers, is that what eagles are? They don't have to be, because a lot of people think of what we call the fell beasts. You know, those creatures, they're not really called fell beasts, but you know those creatures that the Ringwraiths ride. Well, what are they then? Are they corrupted eagles? It's, I don't really know, but I don't really think of it that kind of one to one kind of way, because it's a bit like when they say uh, a bit like when they say trolls are mockeries of Ents. A lot of people take that to mean an Ent was corrupted and became a troll, and that's not what Tolkien means. They are mockeries of Ents. They are made to be mockeries of Ents, and they're weaker than Ents. They're not as great as Ents. They're derivative works of corruption. So it's not that like a dragon can be a mockery of eagles, if you want to think of it that way, but it doesn't mean that they have to have been made from eagles. That's a way you can read it if you want, but I wouldn't say for sure that a dragon is it must be a corrupted version of an eagle. It could be anything you're thinking of. There could be lizard creatures in Middle Earth roaming about, and Morgoth took them in like he did with wolves, uh, fed them fell meats and put his power into them, and they became big, monstrous, giant lizards. I like that explanation. That also explains, and you maybe put spirits into them. No, dragons could be to lizards as werewolves are to wolves. So why not? Matt, I recognise that. Is that Limbo? Your avatar. I like that game. What do you think about mortality being considered a gift of mankind's, when most would view it as a tragic limitation? Sorry, before I answer your one, someone's generously left a super chat. I'll promise to get back to you, Matt, but I don't want this one to disappear since he's left the chat. So thanks very much, Andreas. If it came to it, do you think Durin's Bane would take orders from Sauron, or do you think the Balrogs would view themselves as equals in terms of rank? Well, I don't know about rank, but there's talk of Sauron actually sending orcs to Moria to inhabit it and almost kind of work with Durin's Bane. But this is a really interesting one. I can't answer it um, like Tolkien said this, and Balrogs would never serve Sauron or anything. But would they serve him? I think I wouldn't say it as taking orders, but possibly working to further his goals. There's a possibility. I would say. I know I've said in my Nature of Balrogs, the podcast episode, that Balrogs don't really show much initiative. They exist to basically serve Morgoth and await his return and everything like that. But they are still evil. That's important to note. I think if Sauron showed up, they would know who Sauron was, and I don't see them saying like, "Well, I'm going to rule Middle Earth." Balrogs don't seem to want to, but if it was in their interest, maybe, and Sauron could use them, you know, Durin's Bane, can you assault Lothlorien or something like that? Why not? I don't think it's out of the question. But there's also this idea that the Balrogs, as I said, attuned themselves to Melkor so early that the idea of Sauron bossing them around, giving them orders, they could just ignore him. They could just see Sauron as lesser than Morgoth. No. If you talk about rank, they are of the same order as in the Maiar, but Sauron's still greater than Balrogs. That should be noted. I think Sauron is possibly, arguably, the greatest of the Maiar. In many ways, I'm not saying I don't want to do this pyramid ranking or something like that, but Sauron is great. You know, it's also possible that Balrogs would know that and help him out or something like that. But again, I don't see any problem using your imagination here. It's a bit like the Smaug debate with, I know Tolkien started in the Quest of Erebor this idea that, oh, Gandalf, we need to stop the dragon because he could devastate the north. I've never taken that as Smaug serving Sauron, but kind of working with him, being. I think I've talked about this on a post somewhere. It's not a video, but I've talked about this in detail before, where I was saying it's almost as if Sauron could say, "Can you do all this stuff in the north and attack the dwarves and ruin their lives, basically, and then you can have all their hoards of treasure?" It's almost something like that, where if the Balrog could get something, then why wouldn't he do something? But before I just ramble on forever, Durin's Bane was hiding out in Moria, and there's the possibility that he would not leave it, and not for Sauron. I think the only time we would leave it would possibly be for Morgoth, but it opens up that interesting discussion about Sauron claiming to be Morgoth in the Third Age. Maybe he's telling them, I can do what Morgoth was trying. Help me out. Again, it's up to you. You can tell me what you think about that. So I don't want to miss. Sorry, I have to go all the way back up because I'm talking too long in one comment. So, the gift of mankind. This is something that I bring up quite a lot when this kind of lofty topic comes up, because a lot of people compliment some aspects of videos where they'll say, "Oh, you've covered Tolkien's faith quite well," or they'll start to assume that I'm a Christian or something because of the way I present some of the topics. But I'm not religious at all, and I've never been. But this is the difference. I'm not, when it comes to questions like this, I don't say what I think. I'm going to answer Matt because he's asked me directly, but when I present this information, I try to cover what Tolkien was going for. So that's why I defend Eru to the death in comments when people say Eru's the true evil of Arda. I say, of course he's not, because I know that's what Tolkien, he never intended Eru to be seen as evil. But a lot of people will say that, and I'm trying to cover what Tolkien was going for. So that's also why a lot of the time I defend the gift of men. And a lot of people were like, "Oh, of course it'd be better to be immortal." But I'll say, in the Legendarium in Arda, that's not necessarily true. It's like Tolkien directly states that the powers will even envy men for having this gift. Tolkien's like trying to push it onto you that it's seen as a good thing that even though your life's short, your destiny's in your own hands. You can achieve greatness in that life, but don't fret with it being a short life. There's something afterwards, and that's like guaranteed in the Legendarium. That seems like a real gift, and we're not talking about in our world. In the Legendarium, Eru exists, and Eru, despite what a lot of people might think, has the best interests of men at heart, and it is a gift of men. They have their issues, but elves have their own gifts as well, and they have their own issues. No one's perfect. The Valar aren't perfect either, and they make loads of mistakes. But the gift of men is a gift, and it's not just the extended life. It's this idea of being free from the music of the Einar. That's a big thing as well. It's why certain figures don't understand them, and why other figures hate them. I think Morgoth really hates men, and I think he's closest to them. But yeah, for these kind of questions, I just try to really understand what Tolkien was going for, try to understand. But I'll always say with these kind of deep questions about faith and life after death and all of that, there are some great scholars of Tolkien's works who are religious, who I really like their thoughts on it. And personally, I don't share them in the real world, but I'm not here to talk about the real world. I'm talking about Tolkien. So it is a gift, and it's a gift because Tolkien says it is. He's almost like the figure that's. A lot of people think of Galadriel as being the figure through the whole Legendarium, and it's Elrond. It's Elrond for me. It's I don't want to bring up Rings of Power too much, but I really wish that in that show Elrond was the main character instead of Galadriel. Like you say, a lot of tragedy. There's first age, the details of his upbringing there, quite a strange upbringing. Second age, we've got this whole deal with his brother. Oh, sorry, I can't believe I forgot. He's the whole deal with his father in the first age as well. That's kind of a huge topic. His brother on the second age. This whole half elven deal. Sauron's return, the Gil-galad, being a herald of him, and taking over with Ladris and his responsibility in the third age. His whole deal with the chieftains of the Dunedain. Elrond is for me the figure, almost as if he's the one sitting telling us about all this, and it's not Bilbo or Frodo or someone like that. I think Elrond is the main character, if you want to say that. Well, Reincarnation of Elves. There's a whole big deal about this in Laws and Customs of the Eldar and History of Middle Earth, with reincarnation or re-embodiment. Tolkien changed his mind, but what you're thinking of, I've covered in Durin the Deathless video, where there's the dwarven belief that certain figures within their race are re-embodied or reincarnated, depending on the belief, but only certain figures. So when it comes to the rest of dwarves, we don't know. You have to remember that the Silmarillion is really written from the perspective of elves. There's a lot of the dwarves return to the stone whence they came and all that. It's that mythological explanation. Do they go to Mandos, when a section of Mandos, and work with Mahal or Ali? But I like that we don't know. It's quite interesting. Like, dwarves are so secretive and hard to understand that the idea of us knowing everything about them when they die wouldn't make any sense. We don't even know how they live, really. So these are mysteries, but they do have very different, it seems, uh, periods following death. But dwarves, only certain dwarves are maybe dwarves that return, but all elves are immortal and they have the chance to be re-embodied. Oh, apologies. I put a chat in the. I put a link in the Discord. I don't think you saw that, but yeah, I was just explaining at the beginning. Internet basically went, and but thankfully there's quite a few people here now, and that, so it's not been a complete disaster. But it was going to happen at some point. I think I watched one of In Deep Geek's streams, and it happened to him. It was just like that for about 10 minutes, and then the stream went. But technical difficulties. One dimensional. It's, well, oh, sorry. To fix my mic. It's maybe unfair to Arwen, because if not a lot's written about her, then we can't really judge what she's like, really, can we? We just don't know. But she's compared with one of the greatest elves who ever lived. So maybe we're just being told stuff about her without actually experiencing it herself. But one dimensional, maybe because there's just not a lot written about her. I did a weird quiz thing earlier. I think I was just bored. I was just sitting there, and it was on Sparkle. I don't know if anyone's ever been on that. And it was like, can you name the top 50 Lord of the Rings characters, like in the books, by how many times they're named? It turns out I can, but Arwen is only mentioned something like, I think it was like 22 times or something like that in the whole Lord of the Rings, and she wasn't in the top 50. So Arwen isn't even in the top 50 mentioned characters in Lord of the Rings. She's just not there. We get that. We get nice moments in many meetings, and we get the nice moments with Frodo at the end of the story. But you have to really read the appendices to get a bit more, and she might not be as one-dimensional. If you've not read the appendices, go and read the Tale of Aragorn and Arwen. No. Don't be thinking that. No stupid questions, and I don't have all the answers. So there's plenty of questions people can ask me where I'm like, I don't know. I'm happy to talk with anyone who wants to talk about Tolkien. It doesn't matter if you've read Lord of the Rings 100 times or you've not read it yet. Okay. Just scrolling down. There's some comments about things I must have talked about 20 minutes ago, so I don't know what they're referring to. Well, you should know Oliver as my biggest supporter over on Patreon at www.patreon.com/theredbook. I have made a Fëanor video. I made one about his repentance, his stay in Mandos, and why Tolkien said he'd never leave, and my thoughts on that. So you are no longer on Patreon. I'm going to have to kick you off. Don't trust Quora, right? I wrote on Quora for 4 years or so. What a waste of time. But I wrote on Quora for like 4 years. There's a lot of people who talk absolute crap, right? And don't need to say anything. You don't need to say anything on YouTube either. There's a lot of channels that just say things, and like, well, I don't think that's right, but they've said it, and everyone believes them. But Quora is really bad for it. There's a lot of people who, again, I sound really arrogant saying this, but they don't know a lot about Tolkien, but they think they do, and they write a lot about him, and they just talk nonsense. So I think I've seen that answer. No is the easy answer here. None of that's true. Calculate the distance they fell, the core of the planet, and all that. No, that's Ben. I'll just say, don't read or don't believe everything you read on Quora. There's a lot of nonsense written on there. Some more generous viewers. Geez, there's so many comments I've not reached yet. Sorry, I've been really slow. And that's what people comment. They'll say, "You're really slow. Can you speed up?" And it's like, I can't really. I take ages to say anything. Thanks very much, Mumbo Jumbo. Tolkien Untangled. I've talked about this before. For some reason, I always get compared with Tolkien Untangled. So I went to watch some Tolkien Untangled videos and I didn't see it, like the similarities. But for some reason, it's always Tolkien Untangled, and I don't understand why. So maybe you can tell me. Well, you've not really compared me with them there, but a lot of people do. They'll say like, "Oh, I really like the Red Book and Tolkien Untangled," and I always thought it would be Tolkien lore or maybe Girl Next Gondor or something like that. But we've said they're true to Tolkien. Zeppelin, yes, they definitely do. There's loads of songs about Tolkien. We've actually got a music channel on the Discord, and it's not just Blaine Guardian getting shared in that, but there's we talk about that. We've talked about bands that sing about Tolkien and all that stuff, and bands that maybe use Tolkien names and they don't sing about Tolkien. So Amon Amarth is probably the most famous example of that. I think they just said the name sounded cool, but they've stolen one of the coolest Tolkien names and they don't even sing anything about Tolkien. But thanks very much for that super chat. Another one from Martin. Oh no, I feel really bad. Thanks for the super chat, but this is a question we don't have an answer to, so I might have to give you a refund a bit. Who forged the weapons of the Nazgul? Morgul knife, the Witch King's sword. It's a really interesting question, but I've never thought about that. And I quite like that idea when you're saying Sauron, because I was like just thinking he could do that, and he'd probably enjoy doing it. Am I starting to believe that Sauron forged the weapons of the Nazgul? I might. That's actually quite a cool idea. Because they're really interesting, the Morgul blades and their properties. You always get the people that say, couldn't they just run around Middle Earth and turn everyone into wraiths and all that? But I don't know. But I like your idea there. I like this idea of Sauron. It talks about his sorceries and his forgings in Mount Doom. No, he didn't just go to Mount Doom and make the One Ring and then stop. Tolkien's implying that he made other things. So, why not? And I think the Witch King's sword's a cool idea. The fire comes from the Witch King, though. That's his sorcery at that moment. It's a really cool moment. And just talking about that, I really love Gandalf's reaction to that. It's one of my favorite moments where it's like, I know this is completely irrelevant to what you're talking about. I just wanted to say where he's kind of standing there on Shadowfax, or sitting there on Shadowfax, and it's as if the Witch King is just absolutely showing off. He's shouting about this and that, how great he is. It's his time and all that, and he's flames running down a sword, and Gandalf's just kind of staring at him. I really like that bit. But thanks. I can't really answer that, but I like your idea. I might actually just say that Sauron did, because why not? So I need to scroll back up here. Good one here. Kyle. This is something that I've always thought about with the orcs, where you're saying there that Ali made the dwarves, but they basically were puppets. They just did what Ali commanded them to do or willed them to do. And a similar thing may have happened with orcs, where they were doing what Melkor wanted them to do, but then if you want to understand why they all seem like individuals, it could be something to do with Melkor creating Morgoth's ring, I should say, where his power is into the world itself, and those who rely on the earth for sustenance are tainted by Morgoth. So it's almost as if orcs, as a consequence, can be really, really dominated, but they don't just stand still waiting to be told what to do. It's almost as if like the will of Morgoth's just constantly battering into their head, and that's why they're like, because Tolkien says the eye of not Sauron but Morgoth, they can like see it in their own mind's eye, just Morgoth telling them what to do, forcing them to do stuff. They're just overwhelmed all the time by him, and I like that idea. But what you're saying there is also interesting, and it's something that I've thought about with dragons before, where you're saying you could have made new creatures without a template, but he'd have to do what Ali did with the dwarves and constantly command them or whatever. There's all these untold creatures that would have been slain by the Valar assaulting a Tumno and all of that. I like that idea. I talked to a great artist that I use sometimes, Pete. I don't know if it's Amatri or Amacri. I don't know how he pronounces his last name, but I messaged him on Twitter and I was saying, "What's this creature you've got here?" It was the last stand of Hurin, and he just said, "Oh, I just imagined that Morgoth made all these monstrosities that don't have names. They're just creatures that he made." And that's a brilliant idea. I really like that. So again, why not? People just imagine things. It's not as if Melkor is just in his fortress with orcs and some Balrogs. Why couldn't there just be all these other things that are there, you know? So, give me 1 second here. Someone's asked me to share the link to this. Bear with me. So yeah, great point there. Trying to get through. There's always people that I miss out, so I'm trying not to go to the same all the time. One Punch Man with the ring, maybe he could have used Balrogs. That's an interesting point. Imagine Sauron trying to dominate a Balrog with the One Ring. Maybe people can share what they think about that. Aurora says hello, but you said hello. Geez, 25 minutes behind in this chat. Hope you've not left. Let's see. A lot of people saying they like the channel. Thanks very much. I'm not going to bring them on screen just to boast about them, but it's always good to hear. And yes, this is a good point. Something good for men after they die. The fear is because of Melkor's deception. So, yeah, even way before, it's the idea of death wasn't a bad thing at all. It's become corrupted because of Melkor. There's that great story where he's pretending to be Eru, basically. And again, I really want to do a video about this. I've already been writing it, but it's such a detailed, long video that I keep getting distracted by other things, stories. And yeah, that's the beginning of this fear of death. And it's very hard for you to put yourself into that mindset, though, of not fearing it. It's like, well, what is this untainted view of death like? We don't really know ourselves, do we? But I like that point. Do I think that? Oh, Morgoth's asking a question. Do you think we'll one day see Beren and Lúthien in the movie? It would also be okay for me. Oh, a hot tiger. Okay, Beren was a Swedish guy. Yeah, Beren sounds like a Swedish guy. Beren and Lúthien in the movie, probably, or a TV show or something like that. I think the floodgates are going to, they're wide open with this show. And I think in our lifetime, I talked about this on the adaptations stream quite a bit. A lot of people were asking about Silmarillion movies and TV shows and all that, and I think they'll happen. Beren and Lúthien, Turin, all these kind of stories, I think they'll be made in some way. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. Can they really handle that? But there's been gifts, membership gifts handed out by Callisto. Thanks very much for that. It's brilliant. Put another super chat. Geez, thanks a lot for the super chat. You've asked a huge question. Tolkien was Catholic. Eru is like God. Christianity, everything is determined by God. Geez, that's a deep question to be asking me. Free will. See, this is the problem though, because it's if we're talking about it being determined by God, I talked about this with Girl Next Gondor on a Morgoth video. Again, I've said I'm not religious, I'm not a theologian or anything. I can't really explain how Christians would view this, but it doesn't really matter that Eru can maybe see all outcomes or possibilities or something like that. Eru exists outside of the world. It's maybe difficult for me to wrap my head around, and I'm trying to explain it, but everyone gets free will, but Eru can still see an outcome because he's timeless. That's how I view it. And there were probably people in the chat saying you're talking nonsense, that's not what it means, and I'd love to learn more about it, but if he's in the timeless halls, time doesn't exist. He'll know what an outcome will be, but does that stop you having the free will to reach that outcome? I don't think so. He just knows what your outcome is going to be. It's 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 a question I'm being asked on this Tolkien chat, and this is a question philosophers are answering. So that's just how I view that. It's you have to just think of Eru being outside. He's not doing what a lot of people think, where he's in there picking away at things and forcing all these decisions. It's you have the free will, and the free will is you can follow this path, you can go against that path. People can try and bring you back onto the good path, but you're allowed to not do it if you want. And does Eru know that you're not going to do it? Well, it starts to kind of hurt my head when I think like that. But yeah, Morgoth or Melkor was allowed to rebel because everyone could have rebelled. Manwë could have if he wanted to. You're allowed to do it if you want. He's not forcing you into one decision, but he'll know the decision you'll make, and that's the bit that kind of maybe starts to get confusing for people who aren't who don't believe in this in the real world. But you can see that when it comes to making maybe videos about determinism and free will, even things like theodicy and all of this, it's pretty difficult to do. There's people that will know a lot more about this, but that's just how I view it. I just view Eru knows a choice you'll make, but you still have an unlimited number of choices to make. It's just because he knows what you'll do, it's because he exists outside of time and space and all that, because he's God. Thanks again, Andreas, for the super chat. Thing I find most interesting about the Legendarium, creatures with unknown origins. Ungoliant, Nameless Things, and the Watcher, feels Lovecraftian. Yeah, you're reading my mind. That's what I love all these creatures as well. And they're all nameless. That's the thing. It's people have to realize that Ungoliant, for example, doesn't call herself that. That's just a description of what she is. No, it's all these descriptions of gloom and darkness and spider. it's just describing what this thing is. It's like if you saw this big Gloomweaver dark spider shape, they're naming her that. That's pretty much it. Does Ungoliant have a name that she called herself or something like that? We don't know. But I think just have to realize that it's the same as Shelob. Shelob's not her name. You know, it's maybe it's just semantics I'm talking here. But Nameless Things, the Watcher's another one. The Watcher's not his name. That and the Nameless Things. When I made that Nameless Things video, I didn't really mean it to seem like I was saying there's a race under Moria that are called the Nameless Things. It's possible that everything under there is like unique. There may be loads of different types of creatures. They're just things that don't wander the earth and they've not been given a name. That's what makes them nameless. And definitely Lovecraftian, that's the very nature, that's what it is, the unknowable, nameless things. But with their origin in the same place, I've no idea. It's Ungoliant seems to maybe be one of the Ainur. I like the idea of her being a creature of the void. I like that idea. Like the personification of it. Maybe like personification of Discord, something like that. But the Nameless Things maybe descended into Arda at some point, but maybe they were there when it was made, because there's this whole quote about them being older than Sauron, which I've always taken to mean when Arda was formed, there was creatures in it when it was formed, and that was before Sauron and the rest of them descended into the physical world. That's how I kind of think of that. But yeah, I love all this stuff. I love the Lovecraftian nature of these creatures. It's really cool. We'll get another one here from Martin. Thanks again. Oh, the Aratar. I've actually got just to show I'm not making it up. Let me find this, because I say this stuff all the time. It seems like I'm just saying it for the sake of it. On my big list of videos that I need to make, I have a video called "Who Are the Aratar? What's the significance of the Aratar as a subcategory of the Valar?" And it's 197 on the list, right? I like lists, but I'm definitely going to make a video about them. But what I find interesting about the Aratar is that they seem more in tune with or responsible for important aspects of reality. So it's not a surprise that there are all these figures associated with death and the sea and the earth and the skies. It's a bit like, I don't want to do a one-to-one comparison here, but if you think of the Greeks, the Greek mythology, we know there's the Olympians, but some Olympians are greater than other Olympians, and you'd always put Hades, Zeus, and Poseidon at the top. And Tolkien seems to mention figures like Manwë, Aule, Ulmo. And if you just look at the figures that are in this Aratar group, they seem to be the ones responsible for, like I said, the world as it is, the shape of Arda and what's in it. You know, the flora and fauna, the waters, the skies, the mountains. the other Valar are great, of course, but they might have more difficult to pin down responsibilities and what they actually did in the music and all that. The Aratar seem to be the greatest because they have to be the greatest. They're the ones that they shaped the world more than the other ones did. These aspects of creation and reality, as I said. So I'll make a video on that and try and explain that a bit better. But if I just ask you to look at the list of the Aratar and say, what do I associate each of these beings with? And you'll notice that they're mostly associated with really important things. And no, Tulkas isn't going to be one of them. No, what's Tulkas responsible for, really? What did he shape in the world? Don't really know. But if I told you what's Manwë responsible for, what's Ali responsible for, you'd probably be able to think of an answer pretty quickly. So just going back up here. So I'm just so lost here. Terrible looking through these comments. He doesn't say that, but that's the idea. It's like if Glorfindel went with the Fellowship, I always think it's quite a funny idea. I can just imagine some orcs coming across the Fellowship and it's like Glorfindel standing there. Glorfindel to me just seems like a beacon of, if you think of Elf Lord, you think of Glorfindel. He's great for scaring off evil figures, but he'd be terrible in Mordor. Now we always laugh at the Sauron lighthouse kind of idea. It's just imagine Glorfindel trying to sneak through Mordor. I don't think it would work. People might ask though, they'll say, geez, I'm just about to say something and I'm like, I'm sure I've got a video idea written down for this as well, where it's, if that's the whole deal with Glorfindel and why he can't go, then what about Gandalf? Because he's a Maya. But the whole idea there is that he's cloaked in a very real body of a man, and his true nature and spirit should be pretty hard to detect. But again, I don't want to say that as if it's like a light switch going on or off or something, but yeah, Glorfindel would be great at helping in the battles and stuff, but being stealthy, I don't really think so. So let's keep going through it. Who's this really annoying guy in these comments? Just spamming absolute shite. Right. Yes, thanks very much, Callisto, for the gifts. Lord of Gifts. Here's a good one as well. Do I think the gift of men was universal? Do you think the Easterlings that served Sauron and Morgoth still received the same gift? The Nazgul were bound to Arda. Yes, definitely universal. It's the exact same as someone earlier asking if all elves were immortal. It's like, this is a gift. This is their nature, and it doesn't matter if they're serving Sauron or Morgoth. They'll all go to the halls of Mandos. They can't. They can't not go. And the Nazgul are a strange case because of these rings of power, but as soon as they were free of them in death, they would have went to Mandos as well. It's doesn't matter who you serve, if you're good, if you're evil, or if you're anything in between. If you're a human and you die, that's where you're going to go. So it is universal. Yeah, like this stuff, just piss off. uh, mm-mm. An interesting idea of would Eru care if you believe in him? Well, Eru doesn't require worship. That's an interesting thing. It's there are those that praise him, and but this whole idea of like temples seems to end up becoming a negative thing. We also have the Numenorians who had their prayers to Eru and everything like that, but we end up thinking of temples as in Temple of Melkor and these temples in the east of Middle Earth, and worship seems to become something bad, which I find really interesting with Tolkien as a Catholic. There's a lot of ritual and ceremony and everything, but yeah, there's no like we have to make a church to Eru, uh, or seeing that as a good thing. Really, I find that pretty interesting. And Sauron actually showed up. Sauron's a member of the channel who I always have these live events and the Patreon only streams and everything always when he can't make them. So good to see you here. So I'm just trying to get through these comments. I'm never used to this many. Good. Am I continuing my Heroes of the First Age series? I like that that's the one you've mentioned because that is the next one. That's the one I'm actually doing. But I'm not doing imprisonment. Well, I think I'll mention it because, like a lot of these heroes, there's more than one act that's heroic. No, of course there is. So sometimes I try and mention other things that they did, and I'm going to mention the whole werewolf and Beren and all of that. But this Heroes of the First Age video will be about the Song of Power with Sauron. So I already have a recording, because you'll know from these videos that I get Phil Dragash to record sections, and he's recorded the battle with, between these figures, and it's really cool. So it's the longest he's recorded for me, and it needs to that section needs to be done right. So I think it's going to be out in November when I start working on it. It should be November, but that'll be quite interesting. And yeah, so I will be continuing it, and that is what I'll be. That is the figure I'll be talking about next. So you just have to wait for that one. Thanks very much. Hello from across the water. Good to have you here. Well, we don't have. Also, we don't have like a number here or anything like that. I would say mithril would be the rarest thing, but it's obviously not rare enough for dwarves to spend quite a while mining it and for it to be used in various places across uh, Middle Earth. But it's obviously rare enough that it's 10 times the value of gold or whatever, but we're not talking about a handful. We're not talking about like something like plutonium or something like that. It's can still be used. There's still some to be gathered, but and then we don't know what happened to the mithril that Sauron actually held either. Um, that's quite an interesting thing to think about. I want to see if anyone's talked about this. So I'm away reading stuff while I'm on a stream. Sorry, I end up getting distracted. We've got a couple more of these. Plixiplox is back. Thanks again. I answered this somewhere. I'm trying to find my post. Yeah, I've got a post here where I've talked about it. Okay, I answered this. Sorry, I'm like getting so distracted by text I'm trying to find. If you're wanting to really find out about this kind of stuff, you have to go to History of Middle Earth, and there's an interesting part that talking about the gift of men. Dior. Now, all those who have the blood of mortal men, in whatever part, great or small, are mortal, unless other doom be granted to them. But in this matter, the power of doom is given to me. And this is when he starts talking about Erendil and Elwing. And it says, Christopher Tolkien's commentary on that line, it is to be observed that according to the judgment of Manwë, Dior, Thingol's heir, son of Beren, was mortal, irrespective of the choice of his mother. So, why isn't it counted? Let me. Geez, I'm going to end up sitting here looking for this the whole time. So, I think the answer here is that despite being technically mortal, we're still talking about a half-elf. But there's also this whole deal with when Tolkien actually made the comment about unions of men and elves. It's actually different from other texts at another time. And this comes out all the time with this union. But I think it's to really do with man, I need to come back to this one. This one's like boggling my mind. I'm getting so confused with my quotes. I'll only come back to that one, Plixiplox. You need to ask me again in 10 minutes. Super chat from Callisto, thank you. Many seem to have a vision that Tuor would be important for men and elves, but Ulmo seems to be driving it forward. Any thoughts on why he's so heavily involved? I think this is to do with it's so bright. I think this is to do with Ulmo's role from as far back as the music of the Einar, where he says, therefore, as part of his message and instruction to Tuor, he says, therefore, though in the days of this darkness I seem to oppose the will of my brethren, the lords of the West, that is my part among them, to which I was appointed ere the making of the world. Yet doom is strong, and the shadow of the enemy lengthens, and I am diminished until in Middle-earth I am become now no more than a secret whisper. So, if we're asking why he's so involved, it seems to be in his nature to be involved. It seems to be a part of what he put into the music. He's told he never abandons the children, and this just seems like some connection that he has with them that others may not. It's maybe an understanding of them that others don't share either. We're told that, for example, the race of men, the Valar don't really understand them, but that's a very general term, a general explanation. It seems like it's not going to be universal. They're not all going to have the same amount of understanding. Ulmo understands them more. He cares for them maybe more than some of the others do due to the lack of understanding. And this seems in his nature. That's why that quote is talking about, it's like a role he has to play, a doom. It's from before the world was even made, before men and elves were even in it. And it's just a responsibility from his part in the music. We're talking about destiny and all that stuff again. So, geez, I could talk about that for quite a while. That's a really interesting question. I feel bad about Plixiplox. I was reading my own post about the union of elves and men, and then got confused by what I'd even written. So I'll need to definitely come back to that one. It's probably the first time I've not been able to just answer the question in the stream. Let's see. Random box. Hello again. There's no unfitting questions, but here we go. Did Sauron use the ring because he was becoming weaker on real space? A 40k term. Warhammer. I needed an anchor to stay alive. I don't know what real space is, but no. I was talking to some people in Discord, I think, again, about this very, very recently, and we were talking about the creation of the one, or was it on Discord? It might have been on Tolkien Lore's comment response, but no, it was. Sorry, I'm talking nonsense. It was in Discord. Sauron wouldn't imagine losing the ring or becoming weaker. In fact, when he had the One Ring, he, as I said at the beginning of the stream, or maybe the last stream, he was enhanced. It's Sauron doesn't think in terms of I'm becoming weaker and I have to do this. It was more I can become greater and I'm going to do this. It's Sauron wasn't going anywhere. He could have just lingered in Middle Earth, but he had his motives. He wanted to. Which this is very weird because the Rings of Power show kind of referenced this, so I was really surprised about it. With his good motives for Middle Earth after Morgoth's fall, where he wanted to shape it according to his own will, and that obviously leads to corruption, the desire to control others, and he had a way in with Rings of Power, which were to create a bliss east of Aman and Middle Earth, which is Elves really wanted, and Sauron used it. He was helping them do that. He was creating his own ring to do the same thing, this unchanging world. But then he created this master ring that could rule all the other ring bearers, and then he would basically be, the Lord of the Rings, right? But it wasn't anything to do with becoming weaker. It was all an attempt to get more control and greater power, in fact. And yeah, it's all speaks of Sauron's motives. He's not a destroyer like Morgoth was becoming or became. He really, really wanted to rule others instead of just taking them all out. And his plan was actually good, but he didn't think of certain things, but why would he? And as Joe says here, it was all to, he places himself in the physical world to get a greater control over it, which is similar to what Morgoth was doing. That's why Tolkien compares them. But Sauron's was very concentrated into one object, and that one object actually gave him far greater control, and he could wield it as a weapon. He was enhanced on Earth, as Tolkien says, with it, but that would lead to the ability to not destroy him, but diminish him really greatly by destroying that object. That was his big downfall. Oh, are you there? Yeah. C2, sorry, I was just trying to get back to Plexiplox here from a terrible answer again. It's actually interesting that you're talking about this because I've written this down and there's actually 7. If you really go into the Third Age and that there's 7 unions between. No, there's still the race of men, the race of elves, but different groups within them. So there's the Dunedain, Sylvan elves, and half elves. Noldo, Vanya. Yeah. I'll have to kind of really think about that one. Because, yeah, I know the quote you're talking about with the 3 unions, but this could just be easily explained with, well, this one place Tolkien wrote that and it's been overruled later. But there's really 7 though. So Snow Warning is saying here that it's between a man and a half elf for Tolkien, right? So let's bring my list back up. We're doing an investigation live on the live stream. So let's see if Snow Warning is right. Yeah. There is, but there's Mithras, Imrazor, Arwen, Aragorn, Celebrian, Elrond, Erendil, Elwing, Nimloth, Dior, Idril, Tuor, Lúthien, Beren. Yeah, not Imrahil, Imrazor. But man, that's hurting my head this time of night. Plexiplox, you've asked the best and the worst question tonight with that one. I think there's another before we're almost wrapping up, since I'm working in the morning and I need my bed, and Plexiplox has hurt my head with that question. And I'll need to work out why I can see 7 unions when Tolkien says there's 3 and people are saying there's 4. It's something I've never really thought of in great detail. Thanks again, Martin, for another one. You keep sending these out. You don't have to. I'll answer your question. But how evil are the Nazgul really? You can argue that their agency is limited for evil acts they commit after accepting the rings. Well, how evil? How do we judge that? But there's always the chance that all 9 of them were evil in the beginning when they got the rings. But there's also the chance that maybe 1 or 2 of them were what we'd consider evil. We don't know. We don't know their origins. But we know that you would fall at different times based on what you were doing with the ring and your your intent, the evil will you held in the beginning. That's what Tolkien says. And there's, like I say, there's always the chance that someone who was not entirely evil still fell through the power of the ring and then was bound to the will of Sauron. And they do have their own agency. They can do their own things, but as I've said in some of my Nazgul videos, they can't go against the will of Sauron. If he's saying this is what you have to do, achieve this for me or whatever, they're going to have to do it. So this is Tolkien does describe them as evil though, but there's always a chance that some are corrupted into evil, and do you place the blame entirely on them? Again, it's one of these things where you're meant to pity them, aren't you? And I think maybe a figure like the Witch King, I've always imagined the Witch King as being possibly pretty evil before he ever became a Ringwraith, and he is the greatest of them, and he's the leader of them. He's most willing to serve Sauron and all that kind of thing. He maybe fell quicker than others or something like that. It's just speculation, but again, I don't want to, just like the Valar and everyone else, because there's 9 Ringwraiths, I don't want to group them all in the same way and say they all fell at the same time. They were all just as evil as each other. It could be a wide spectrum of really pitiable figures and other really evil figures. Just like the when I talk about the Easterlings or the Haradrim or these kind of groups, they're not all. There's evil figures among them, definitely. Those worshipping Sauron and enslaving others and murdering them and all that. There's definitely loads who aren't though, and they're kind of forced into it. So, yeah, this is just a question everyone's probably got their own answer to. But, so we're wrapping up soon, as I said. I'll try and get through these last comments, and I think we're still debating the union of elves and men. I don't know whether to finish that off, because yeah, I really recommend an Unfinished Tales. There's some good stuff about this as well, and History of Middle-earth 5. Loads that, like, too much to get into just now with all these comments, but it's about when someone's born, if they're immortal or mortal, depending on their parents, that kind of thing. And it's really interesting. And Christopher Tolkien talks about it as well. But again, I don't want to really. I was trying to kind of get into that answer for Plixiplox, but it's things like that are so in depth. I'd rather sit and write it out or something like that than try and give like a soundbite answer to it, because it's a pretty deep question, to be honest. I should have just said that in the beginning than trying to quickly answer it. So, just going through here. Yeah. Broke me. I'm very confident with any question, but while I was kind of answering that one, I was like, but wait, what about them? And then I'm like, half elves. And it's like, oh, but what about them? Why is it only 4? Is it 3? Is it 7? I think you're right there. I'm not going to allow Plixiplox to ask questions anymore going forward. But as I said, I'm confident answering just about anything. But it's not, when I make videos, I don't just get the microphone out and just read everything off my head. There's research and stuff too. I don't know absolutely everything, so I'm still learning stuff as well. And that question is really, really interesting to me, where I kind of need to know why that is, why that quote exists when I don't think it's accurate. So maybe that's the Dead Inconsistency series that I've not went back to in about a year. Maybe I could attempt to explain, when I actually get my head together around it, why there's 3 unions of elves and men when there's clearly more than that. To have to explain why that would be written when it's clearly not the case. Yeah, a few people here saying add it as a video. Yeah, I'm going to do a video on that. And Plixiplox, you'll be happy with the video. Yeah, so I think, or maybe at the end, yeah, from what you're saying here, there's the History of Middle-earth section where it's saying if one of your parents was mortal, you're going to be mortal. Which I think, did you just say that as well? Yeah, that's just what you're saying there. If you're mortal, you're mortal if you have mortal ancestry, unless you're from that very specific line. Yeah, that's right. And Tolkien does say that, and that's from the same source I'm talking about. That's why a lot of people get confused with the why wouldn't the children of like the Elros line? It's like, why can't they all decide if they want to be the kindred of elves or kindred of men? It's like, well, no, Elros made his choice, and all the descendants of Elros now are of the race of men. That's how it works. And I think that's a good way to end it. Basically, this went on quite long because I had the false start, the 20 minutes. Lots of great questions. I don't ask for super chats or anything, but I got quite a lot here. And thanks very much for that. Thanks especially to Plixiplox for hurting my head and giving me a good video idea. And what's coming up? Well, the next video, just before I finish, I'll just show the next video is ta-da! It's very funny name, The Unnatural Upbringing of Fëanor. I couldn't think of a better name. So just to give you a little bit of detail on that, that's actually going to be a podcast episode. I'm writing that out just now. And just to cover it very quickly, I want to do a Fëanor one, but not the usual stuff. So did he do anything wrong or anything like that? I thought I wanted to approach how he is from a position that no one really discusses at all. Sorry, where his family, his upbringing, his very unusual situation when he was young, or not even when he was young, just before he turned into an absolute bastard. We have this the marriage of Finwë and the remarriage, and it's messes Fëanor up quite a bit. It's basically like saying, why did he hate his adopted family and how did that influence his attitude going forward? That's pretty much what I'm going to cover. And trying to maybe understand the personality of Fëanor a little bit more than just saying he did bad things, he was a bad elf. I'm not trying to justify why he did that, but it's more because of how great the evil characters in Tolkien are. There's always reasons for them acting that way. And I want to really talk about that aspect with Fëanor. It's this crazy situation that happened with his mother and his father and his new family, and how that kind of shaped him. That's what I'm going to talk about. So, yes, I will be talking about the right to remarry, what that meant for Fëanor's mother, and why that would, I don't want to say justify him hating his stepmother, basically, if you want to say that. But what I'll say for people who don't know this section of the text, you'll start to maybe understand this internal conflict for Fëanor and why he wasn't very nice to his new family, basically. So, a few people saying it was the first stream. Hope you enjoyed it. I think I'll probably just skip the 20-minute one where the connection went, and this will just be the one that will go onto the channel. I'll maybe explain in the description what happened. But thanks for coming out, and I'll just want to remind people that there's another stream coming up to do with everyone's favourite topic, Rings of Power of all things. That's coming out on the 16th, apparently. Is that when I said that? Sunday the 16th seems to be when I've set it. And we'll talk about Rings of Power and that. Bring your questions, ask whatever you want, give your thoughts on the show. Just don't use the term shills or haters, please. And you can tell me anything you want about it. But that's coming up next. And as Callisto says, there's a members only stream if anyone joins Patreon. That'll be on the 13th. I seem to be busy with streams this month. But I'll shut up now, and I'll see you either on the member stream, Rings of Power, or when I release the Fëanor podcast episode. So thanks again to everyone, and I'll see you next